Hi everyone, Geoff Herd here with the Geneva Music Festival. I hope that you all are well and that you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. This is another educational video that the Geneva Music Festival is providing to schools throughout the Finger Lakes as we continue our mission of raising awareness of classical music in our community. We're proud to be supporting our schools during this time, and while we would love to be visiting with students in person, it's been a joy to listen to and to share performances from our archives. I hope you enjoy this lecture on Johann Sebastian Bach and a performance of his Goldberg variations from the 2019 season of the Geneva Music Festival. So today we're going to talk about Johann Sebastian Bach. Bach was a German composer of the Baroque period. The Baroque era of music spanned from about 1600 to 1750 and was characterized by music that was grandiose, dramatic, and energetic. Since the 19th century, Bach has generally been thought of as one of the greatest composers of all time. And in Germany, during his life, he achieved a significant amount of fame and renown. After his death, his music was mostly unknown and thought of as old-fashioned. Over the course of his life, Bach primarily worked in churches and in noble courts. Bach, being mostly self-taught, used his access to the vast music libraries in the courts in which he worked to study the works of other composers. He also had interactions with musicians from all over the European continent. The courts in which he worked would hire musicians from Italy and France, and so he would hear these musicians perform. And by doing this, he naturally synthesized many different aspects of their music into his works. For instance, Bach might combine aspects of the Italian sonata with French dance, and it made his music very unique. Over the course of his career, he composed over 1,000 works. It's a huge output. There were times where he would have to be writing one cantata a week for the church service on Sunday. His cantatas are some of the great masterpieces of Western classical music, and the period in which he would write these speaks to his level of genius. He wrote in many different genres, including cantatas, masses, concertos, sonatas, hymns, and more, and for all different scorings, for orchestra, for solo voice, for keyboard, for small ensembles. He was a really multifaceted composer. So today we're sharing a performance of Bach's Goldberg variations. Originally, this work was a set of variations written for harpsichord and published in 1741. It's a large-scale work that starts with an aria or a song that's followed by 30 variations on that song, and then a repeat of the aria at the end to kind of tie everything together. In its full length, the work lasts over an hour. There's an interesting legend that goes along with this piece that was first told in 1801 by Bach's first biographer, Nicholas Forkel. According to Forkel, Bach was commissioned to write this work by Count Kaiserling of the Saxony court. The story has it that the Count was sickly and depressed and sad and anxious at night and often couldn't sleep. And so he asked Bach to write a piece for his personal keyboardist, Goldberg, to play at night while he was trying to sleep. And he asked Bach to write a piece that both had very peaceful and soporific movements that would help him fall asleep, and also movements that were lively and cheerful to help him overcome his depression. Apparently, the Count loved the piece and rewarded Bach with a goblet full of gold. Modern scholarship questions this story. We've never been able to find the goblet, unfortunately, and Goldberg in 1741 was only 13 years old, although he was apparently a prodigy and very talented pianist. It's unlikely that he was performing these pieces for the Count at the age of 13. A more likely reason that Bach wrote this set of works is to explore all the different possibilities of the keyboard. Much of Bach's music was written for pedagogical or teaching purposes, and throughout these variations, because he explores so many different techniques, part of why the variations are so interesting, would be a great teaching tool for any pianist trying to learn all the different possibilities for the keyboard. So the performance we're going to be listening to today is actually a transcription or an arrangement of Bach's original work. Recalling that Bach's work was for solo harpsichord, here we'll hear a string trio version where the music has been rewritten to allow it to be performed by a violinist, a violist, and a cellist. It's not unreasonable to arrange Bach's music in this way because Bach himself was an avid transcriber. Earlier, we discussed that Bach synthesized many different styles and techniques into his music that he borrowed from composers all throughout the European continent. One of the ways that he studied other composers' works was by arranging them. So two great influences on Bach were Antonio Vivaldi and Arcangelo Corelli. In the case of Corelli, Bach took a trio sonata and took the music that was written for three musicians and transcribed that work for solo organ. In the case of Antonio Vivaldi, Bach took his violin concertos, which was for solo violin and orchestra, and transcribed that music for a solo harpsichord. And so here, the Russian violinist Dmitry Sitkovetsky took Bach's Goldberg variations and rewrote it to feature three musicians, a violinist, a violist, and a cellist. This is a very fun way to listen to the work because first we get to hear the dialogue of the different voices as three different musicians realize the music. It also gives us more respect for what a solo pianist is doing when they play this work because they're responsible for all this music that here is played by three different people. This is a wonderful performance from the 2019 season of the Geneva Music Festival by violinist Jinju Cho, violist Eric Wong, and cellist Max Geisler. It was performed on a concert celebrating Clara Schumann because Johann Sebastian Bach was a huge inspiration to her. In fact, in our last educational video discussing Clara Schumann, we were sharing a performance of her own set of variations. And it's quite likely that these variations right here inspired Clara in some way to write her own set. So I hope you enjoy this performance from the 2019 season of the Geneva Music Festival. I hope you enjoyed that performance. I love listening to Jinju, Max, and Eric perform. They're such thoughtful and wonderful musicians. You can understand why the Goldberg variations very well may have helped Count Kaiserling with his insomnia and depression. And maybe it's the perfect music for us to be listening to right now as we deal with these stressful and unusual times. If you enjoyed that performance, check us out at genevamusicfestival.com, where we recently announced a virtual season that will take place throughout the course of June. We have live performances and pre-recorded recitals, as well as interviews and discussions with Pulitzer Prize-winning composers, as well as your favorite Geneva Music Festival artists. All of this material will be shared with the Geneva City School District free of charge, and we are greatly enjoying learning how to use technology to share our art. If there's anything we can do for you during these times, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we hope that these videos and performances help you cope with the unusual times that we're facing right now.